Hi everyone, in this video I will talk about one fundamental but very important concept for .NET Core developers. If you are working with ASP.NET Core, then there will be different situations to call the API or the endpoint from your application, and this could be calling your own API that you have created, or this could be calling some external APIs. For example, you may have to work with how to call the GitHub APIs, or how to call the Google APIs, or how to call the YouTube APIs. This concept that I will talk about in this video will be applicable for all type of scenarios, and this is going to be the latest and the most recommended way to deal with the endpoint in your ASP.NET Core application. And this concept is called as HTTP client. There are different ways to use the HTTP client in ASP.NET Core application, and in this video, I will talk about all of them. These different ways of using the HTTP client can be implemented based on different scenarios, and I will talk about all these scenarios in this video. At the end of this video, I will also talk about some common scenarios that we always need to perform while dealing with the HTTP client. For example, you may have to implement the logging for HTTP client at a centralized place. Another example could be that you will have to send some common headers in all the requests. Then instead of writing these headers at all the calls, what is the best way to write them at a centralized place? If I talk about another example, let's say you are working with the Azure functions, and if you are calling the Azure function by using the HTTP request, then you will have to pass a key in the URL. How to pass that key at a centralized place by using the HTTP client that we will learn in this video. Let's start this learning. To learn more about this concept of calling the endpoints from your .NET Core application, I will create an ASP.NET Core Web API application, and whatever concept I will write over there, everything will be applicable in all the .NET Core frameworks. So let's start. Here I can create a new project by clicking on this file button, new, and choose this project. You can also use this Ctrl Shift N, and over here you can choose any .NET Core application. For the simplicity of this video, I will be using this ASP.NET Core Web API. Let's click on the next button, and over here we have to provide a name. This is the name of my application, and let's click on this next button. Over here I have to choose the framework. This is the latest .NET 8, so I will be using this one. And here is the authentication type. Let's leave it none. And these are some basic configurations that I have. Enable open API support, do not use top level statements, and use controller. This concept is also applicable on minimal APIs, but for this video let's use this controllers. Click on this create button, and this will create a new empty application. This is our brand new ASP.NET Core application, and now let's see what API I want to call from this particular application. So here is my postman, and in this postman you will see that I'm having this public API. So this API will return a list of all the universities from a specific country. So for example, if I want to search for this India, so over here in the query string I have to pass some value, and I am passing India over here. Let's click on this send button, and you will see that we will get a response, and here is a list of all the universities in India. You can also test it. For example, here I'm writing this Japan. Click on this send button, and you will see we are getting a list of all the universities from Japan. So this is a third-party public API, and I will be using this API in this demo. To deal with this concept, first let's create a controller, and over here we don't need this weather forecast controller. Let's leave it as it is. Let's get a new controller, and this is going to be API, and let's say universities. Click on this add button, and this will create an empty controller over here. And over here let's get our first action method, and let's use some verbs over here. So this is going to be HTTP get, and let's use the routing. So this is going to be the empty routing. Now I have to call that API from this action method, and for that I can use the HTTP client. So here I'm using that HTTP client like this, and in this client I can set couple of basic things. For example, here I'm setting this base address. What is the base address for this endpoint? The base address is this particular part. Let's copy it, go back to this file, and here we are. Now this base address supports only the URI, so here we have to use the new URI like this, and this URI is expecting an string. So this is how we can do that. Now we are ready to call our API, and we can do that easily by using this where response is equals to. By using this client we can call some methods. So here are some methods, which is get async. If the method of your this API is get, then you can use get async over here. If it is post, then you can also use the post async over here. Similarly, we will have all the methods. For example, this put async, and we also have this delete async. So let's start this learning from our get async, and this get async method we have to provide the request URL. So whatever remaining URL we have, so for example this one, we have to pass it over here like this. Now at this line we will make a call to this endpoint, and because this is an async method, so let's use this await keyword, and here we have to check if the response of this API is success, then we will do our job over here, otherwise we will return a bad request kind of response. So what I can do over here, where result is equals to, let's use this response dot content. So what I'm doing over here, I am basically reading the response that I will get in this particular API, and let's use that read as stream async, this one. And again this is an async method, so I have to use this await keyword. Alright, now let's use the return OK method, and this OK is again coming from this ASP.NET Core Web API, and over here I will return this result, and if this property is not true, it means there is some problem. So here I will return the bad request like this. We are done with the changes. Now let's just run this application and see what is the output. This is the Swagger, and this is our first app. Let's click on this try it out button and click on this execute. Here you will see that we are getting the response of this particular API. Here you will notice something very strange. It is saying unrecognized response type, displaying content as text. It means this API does not know what is the response type of that API, and because of that it is displaying this content as the text. Why is this happening? This is because over here we are reading this data in form of read as stream async. We will fix this part in just a bit, but this is the first way of how to call the endpoint from your ASP.NET Core application. And remember, over here we are passing this value as an hard-coded value. You can also get it from the query or basically from the route. Let's say this is going to be country, and over here let's use this dollar symbol and let's pass this country like this. Perfect. Now here we have to pass the country as well. Let's run this application again and see what is the output. Let's pass this Japan, click on this execute button, and you will see we are getting the list over here. For the simplicity, let's try one country, which is Bhutan, and click on this execute, and this time you will see that we are getting only one university over here. So this concept is working fine. Okay, so here are some more learnings. It is not always required to set this base URL over here. You can also set it directly in your get async method like this, and you don't have to worry about this base address. This concept will still work. Now it is up to you. Now let's talk about our second concept. So let's just copy this code and just paste it again over here, and here I will be using this v2. Let's update some URLs because this is going to be our v1, and this is, let's say it is also v1. As per this new way, I will not use this HTTP client like this. I will not create the instance by using this new keyword. Rather, I will prefer to use or inject this HTTP client in our program.cs file. So for that, let's open this program.cs file, and over here what I will do, builder dot services dot add HTTP client. That's it. Now by using this concept, we have enabled the HTTP client in this application, and now I can use the dependency injections over here. So let's use the constructor dependency injection, and for that I will be using this. Here I have to use this HTTP client factory. Let's just remove this concept from here, and over here first of all we have to create the request message, and we can do that easily by using this where HTTP request message, and there is a class new HTTP request message. We have to use this class. In this class we have to provide what is the method of our endpoint. So let's assume that this is HTTP get, and we also have to provide our request URL. So let's just copy this entire URL, let's just paste it like this. Now we have to create the HTTP client, and we can do that easily by using this HTTP factory. So let's say it is HTTP client, and by using the HTTP client factory that we have injected in the constructor, we can create the new instance of our client. So we can use this create client like this, and now by using this HTTP client we can make the call to our API. So here I'm writing this where response is equals to this HTTP client dot send async, and in this send async method I can basically pass this message, and again this is an async method, so I have to use the await keyword over here. There we go. We are done with the changes, and now let's just test it. We are having this v1 and we are having this v2. Let's try this v1 also. So here I'm passing this India. Click on this execute. You will see we are getting the response. Now let's talk about the second one, and this is our second API. Try it out. Let's pass China, and before that let's put a breakpoint over here. Click on this execute button. Okay, so here we are. Let's click continue. You will see we are getting the request message over here, and we are getting the HTTP client at this place. If I click on this continue button, then you will see we are getting the actual response at this place. The status code is 200, it means it is fine, and this is the is success status code. That is the property that we are using. Now if this is fine, now let's click on this continue button, and you will see we are getting the list of all the universities from China at this place. This is our second way to call the endpoint from our ASP.NET Core application. Now let's talk about the third one. And for that, let's just copy this entire code and paste it again, and let's just write the v3 over here, and here again I will be using this v3. So as per this third approach, what I will be using some named client. Over here, if you have noticed, we are having one problem, and this problem is here you will notice that we are passing this entire URL in this request, or in case if you have to send some default headers in your request, then we also have to define all of them over here. You can remove that easily by using the named client. And for the named client, let's go back to the program.cs class, and over here we have to provide a name to our HTTP client. For example, here I'm writing this universities. You can give any meaningful name over here to create this HTTP client, and now you can configure some default things over here. How? So basically I'm setting this base address over here, and this base address is this particular part. Let's just cut it, go back over here, and again I will be using that new URI concept, this one. In case you have to set some default headers as well, so you can also do that easily by using this x dot default request headers, and over here you will use this dictionary, and in this dictionary basically you will set all your default headers. But the request that I'm using right now does not require any kind of header, so I will not use this one. And now what I can do, I can basically remove this entire thing like this, and over here I just have to provide the name of my this client like this. Alright, now by using this concept I can call another method which is getAsync, and in this getAsync method I have to provide the remaining URL. The remaining URL is this search and the country. Now this is looking good, and it is extremely simple. What we are doing, we are basically injecting the HTTP client in our program.cs class over here by using this line, and we are setting the default setting for this API. The base address we are setting over here. By using the dependency injection, we are using this HTTP client factory in the controller of this particular file, and by using this HTTP client factory I can create this new client like this. Now we are done with the changes. Let's just run this application. So here is the third one. Let's click on this try it out button, execute. Before that we have to pass some value. So for example, this time I will be using Singapore, and click on this execute button, and here you will notice that we are getting the entire data. Alright, now let's talk about our next approach. As of now, what we have done, we have basically injected this HTTP client over here by giving this name, and this is the base address. Now there is another requirement, and as per that requirement I have to call one more API, and for this the base address is different. If I click on the send button, then you will see that this is the response of this API. I want to call this API also. How can I do that? Remember, if I will be using this concept, then I will get this base address for the API, but I do not want to do that. So for that, what I will do, I will basically create one more HTTP client over here like this, and here I will give a different name. Let's say it is jokes, and this time the base address is different. What is the base address? This is the base address. Let's just paste it over here. Now the concept is that if you need to use multiple HTTP clients in your application, then you are free to use. You just have to give a name over here, and all the default setting of that particular API you can set over here. For example, this is the base address for this type, then I have written that over here. In case you need to pass some headers specific to this particular API, then you can set all of them at this place. Alright, now I will be creating my HTTP client by using this jokes, and let's use this. Let's just copy it and go back over here, create one more. and let's use the jokes. This time I don't need these parameter, remove this also, and just write it like this. So jokes, and what is the remaining URL? The remaining URL is this random joke. Alright, we are done with the changes. So what we are doing, basically in our same file we are calling two APIs with different base address. Now let's run this application. Here we are. Click on this try it out, click on this execute, and let's see what is the response. Here you will see that we are getting the response, and this is the response of that API. Now let's deal with this problem. Here we are getting this data as a text. What if I want to get it as the JSON? How to do that? So for that I will be using a type over here. So this is the JSON file. Let's just copy it, go back to our application, and over here let's create a new class. So this is going to be add new item, let's say joke response, and let's just use this Visual Studio feature. Go to edit, paste special, paste JSON as the class. So this is the class, and let's just move it over here, all the properties like this. Alright, now I will be using this class to read this jokes, and let's just update this name also because it is not looking good. Get jokes. So as of now you will notice that we are reading this data as the stream, but this time I will be using this data as the read from JSON, and over here I will have to provide this class name. Now you will notice that we are reading this data in form of JSON. Let's run this application and test it again. Here we are having the Swagger, this is the API. Click on this try it out, execute, and this time you will notice that we are having a proper formatted message, and this is the response body, and this is our response header. So it is application JSON, and because of that we are getting this formatted data. So this is how you can read your response in form of JSON. Now let's talk about our next approach. So we are having this v3, and this time let's just copy it, or let's go with this one. Let's just copy it and paste it again, and here let's use this jokes and basically the v1, get jokes, let's say it is v1. So here you will notice that first we are creating the client, then we are calling this API, and then we are using this method to read the data from this JSON. Instead of that we can also call a method directly over here. What I can do, we can use another method which is get from JSON async. Over here we were using this read from JSON async, but this time I'm using this get from JSON async. Let's just copy it and paste it over here like this, and now I don't have to worry about anything else like this. Let's use this OK method, and in this OK I will be using this response. Let's see what is the difference over here. For that let's hover the mouse over here on this response. This time you will notice that we are having this HTTP response message, and over here you will see that this is the actual response that we are expecting from this API. So what will happen over here, this HTTP client will call this particular API, and it will also map the response in this joke response custom class, and that is the type that we will get in this variable, and this is something we are returning over here. Now you will see that we are getting this output in just 2 lines. Let's just run this application and see if it is working fine or not. This is our new endpoint, try it out. Let's put a breakpoint just for the verification, and here we are. Let's click on this execute button, and you will see that we are getting the response at this place. Click on this continue button, and we are getting the output at this place. So this is also a way that you can use in your application. There is one more approach, and this is going to be very important. As of now you will see that we are using both our HTTP clients in this same file. For example, if I want to create a separate file for the jokes and a separate one for these universities, then how to do that? So basically I want to create a separate service file for these jokes. Let's do that. So add new item, and let's call it joke service, add, and over here let's create one method. So this is going to be public, and I want to return something over here. So as per this concept I will be using this HTTP client, this one, and let's use this HTTP client over here, get from JSON async, and let's use our type. So basically whatever code I have written over here, we can use that code directly over there, this one. And again this is an async method, so let's use the await keyword, and let's just return it from here. And we are getting a warning. It is saying that it could return some null value. So just to avoid it, let's use the question mark at this place. Now we are done with the changes in this joke service. Now let's make some change in our program.cs class. This time I will be using another approach of including this HTTP client, and this time I will provide the name of my service over here. Joke service program.cs class. Let's just use it, and we don't have to provide this key this time. We are providing the class name, and this HTTP client will be using this name as a separate key. Now we can use this joke service as a dependency injection, and let's get a separate controller for the testing. Controller API add, let's use this jokes, and over here I will be injecting that joke service. Let's get our first method. So this is going to be, and let's use this OK method to return the value. So this is OK await. The service name is this joke service dot get joke async. All right, and let's give the proper verb. So this is HTTP get, and let's use the route over here, and we are done with the changes. Now let's just run this application and see what is the output. And here you will see that this is our new controller. Let's click over here, try it out, execute, and you will see we are getting a proper formatted response at this place. If you want to test it, then you can put a debugger over here, and let's put one more debugger at this place also. Click on this execute button again. So here we are, click on this continue button. You will see that we are getting the response from this joke service. Continue, and here we are. And this is the most popular way to use the HTTP client in your ASP.NET Core application. Now these were 5 ways to use the HTTP client in your .NET Core application. Now let's talk about one very important situation, and the situation is what will happen or how you will handle if you have to make some common changes or some common operations in your HTTP client calls. For example, I have a situation that I want to use the logger at a centralized place. Can I do that? Another situation could be that before sending the request, I want to make sure that it has a particular header or a particular value. Another situation could be that I want to append some query string in the URL globally. How to do that? So for that we have to use some delegate handlers. Now let's assume, for example, I want to handle a situation that I need to send a query string parameter in the URL of all the APIs. How can I do that? So for that, let's create a new file over here. So this is going to be add new item, and let's use append query in URL handler. You can give any meaningful name over here, and we have to inherit it from the delegating handler, this one. So this delegating handler is having a method. We have to override that. So let's use this override, and you will notice that we are having this send async method. Let's override that. So in this send async method, you will see we are having this HTTP request. So basically we can modify our request as per the need, and this is something that will be called before calling the actual URL. So for example, here I want to test if the request URI is not null. What does it mean? It means we can also provide or set some conditions over here. Now what I want to create a logic over here. So this is basically the URL. First I'm getting the actual URL from this request URI, this one, and then by using this URI builder, I am just creating this URL, and by using this HTTP utility class, I am setting the query string. So these are my queries, and I am basically preparing my URL over here. Now I can just replace the URL at this place. So this is going to be request URI is equals to this new URI and URL. That's it. Now we are done with the changes of this particular class. You can write your logic as per the need over here. Now we have to use this handler in this application, and how to do that? So let's go back to this program.cs class again, and first of all we have to inject it as the transient. How to do that? So builder dot services dot add transient, like this. Why we are using it as a transient? This is because this HTTP client that we are using over here is injected as a transient service in this application, and because of that we have to use this add transient. By writing this line, we are just adding a dependency, we are not using it. For example, if I want to use it in this joke service, so over here I have to use this dot, and there is another method which is add HTTP message handler, this one, and I just have to provide the name of this handler. Now what will happen? All the calls that we are making by using this approach, those will come at this place. Alright, so let's put a breakpoint at this place, and we are using this in the joke service. So let's go in the joke service, and we already have a breakpoint over here. Let's click on this continue button. Okay, so let's just test it again, execute, and you will see first we are hitting our controller. Perfect. Now we are in the joke service, click on this continue button, and here we are in our handler. Alright, so if I put a breakpoint over here, click on this continue button, you will see in the request we are having some values. We are appending this query string at this place. So this is my query is equals to Nitish, and you can set any value as per your need. Click on the continue button, and we are getting the response. Although that query is not required in this API, but this is how you can deal with some common operations in your application. Now for example, you are in another situation that you have to set header over here, so that is also possible. So we are using this request dot header dot add, and you can set your headers at this place. So first you have to provide the key and then the value. This is how you can set your headers over here. Now let's assume that you want to include the logging also over here. So that is also possible by using the dependency injection. Here I'm using this ilogger, and append query, let's write it at this place, logger, or let's not use this underscore. So what I'm doing over here, basically logger dot log information, and over here I can just write all my information. Let's say I want to log only the URL. My main purpose of using this ilogger class over here is that we can use the dependency injection in this handler. Let's test it and see if we are getting any error or not. Here we are, click on this, try it out, execute, and you will see there is no problem, everything is working fine, and we are getting our response on the browser as expected. Now let's assume that you want to create multiple handlers in your application. So that is also totally possible. You can just register all of them by using this add transient service over here, and you can also use the multiple registration over here. So for example, you can use your second class at this place and third class at this place, and by using this approach you can use n number of handlers in your specific request. That is all in this video. I hope the concept of calling the API, either external or your internal APIs, is clear to you now. If you are still having any question or doubt, then feel free to ask everything in the comment section below. If it was helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.